Hello, welcome to episode 37 of live.withcode.uk. This week it's all about functions and procedures, so how we can split a Python program into smaller parts that do something useful that we can repeat as many times as we like. So the code that we'll work on today will generate a random password. So you can put in the pattern you want your password to meet. For example, 3 A's for the pattern means a password of 3 capital letters, or you can have lowercase letters, or we can have numbers, which I'm not going to implement in this, but I'll leave that as a challenge for you. Or you can have anything else to represent a punctuation mark, something like that. So hopefully, yeah, there we go. Capital letters, lowercase letters, and any other symbols. So let's get started. Remember, the whole point of this is I want you to be able to build up confidence. You can only get confidence if you have practice, and practice builds up experience. And then from that experience, you get the confidence that you're looking for in Python code. So first of all, I would like a function that allows us to do something like generate password. And we can pass some data like 4 capital letters, and it will go away and create a password. But generate password isn't understood by Python, so we need to tell Python how to do that. So to do that, we need to define generate password. Generate password should take a parameter. I'm going to call that parameter pattern, and that's going to be the pattern that the password has to meet. Now, inside that definition, we need to know what to do. For now, I'm just going to say ignore all of that, just that we get rid of the error message and it will run, although it won't do anything useful yet. This is currently a procedure because it doesn't return a value. What do I mean by that? Well, if I say password equals generate password and print password, it's going to be empty. It's nothing. Because a procedure might do something useful, but it doesn't return anything. As soon as I return something here, so let's make up a random password, not particularly random, that return value is passed back as the result of this function and is stored in the variable called password so that we can display it and do whatever we want with it. So we've got a function now called generate password. Now I'd like to be able to loop through every letter in this pattern and do something different with it. So I'm going to make a string called password, and it's an empty string at the moment. And then for each letter in that pattern, we're going to do something different. So this time, let's choose a random character based on that letter. So it doesn't know how to do random character. And even if we did, we're not doing anything with it. What do I want to do? Well, I want to choose a random character and then save that random character onto the end of this empty string. So let's say password plus equals. That means put onto the end of that string a random character based on whatever letter we've got in this pattern here. So we still don't know what random character means. Let's define that function. So random character. We still need to know the pattern, I suppose. This time, we don't need to deal with a whole word of pattern characters. We only need to deal with an individual one. So it's much easier to use an if statement here. So if that pattern is equal to a capital A, then we can return a random letter. How do we do that? Well, we need to tell Python to import the random module. That means that we can do random.choice. And if we have a list of something, you could do like A and then B and then have a list of all of these letters. But because a string is basically just a list of characters, you can have all of the characters of the alphabet in there. So this kind of works at the moment. We're generating a password that has 4 capital letters. For each of those capital letters, we're choosing a random character. And how do we choose a random character? Well, if that pattern matches an A, we'll choose one of these characters. So at the moment, it only does A, B, C, D, E, and F. Okay, to make our code a bit more readable at the moment, let's go for letters. Let's make a constant called letters. Underneath imports, let's define our constants. So letters equals, and then that list of letters in here, so A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. So this time we should be able to get all of the letters. And we can also say, right, if it's not a capital letter, but if it is equal to a lowercase letter that we want, we can return random.choice. Well, I don't want to have to make a whole new constant. Let's use the one we've got and just convert it to lowercase. So this time, if we have 4 capital letters and 4 lowercase letters, yeah, that seems to work. It's nice. So now let's do the same but with symbols. So you can have a variety of different symbols. I'm just going to go for all of these. There we go. And then I can say if it's not a capital letter and if it's not a lowercase letter, then let's return random.choice and then symbols. So let's see, it doesn't choose any symbols at the moment, but if we change our pattern to have anything other than a capital A or a lowercase a, so a comma for example, then we should get a symbol on the end. And it doesn't matter what's there, it could be anything other than a capital A or a lowercase a, it's still going to get a symbol. Okay, so then we can make our program a bit more interactive and let the user type in what pattern they want. So let's display something before we get to this point. So we define our functions first. We should probably comment them to say what they do. So choose an individual random character. Oops, choose. And then this one, help generate a random password from a pattern of characters. Go away console window. And then we should probably give some examples. AA1 would generate a capital letter, a lowercase letter, then a number. Now I haven't implemented it so that if you deal with ones, it would generate numbers, but it's fairly simple. You just add in an extra if statement and probably an extra constant in here. It is essential that you comment your functions and your procedures because the whole idea of functions and procedures, subprograms, is that you can reuse them in other programs. So you want other programmers to be able to understand what they do, if not how they work. Okay, so now let's display a main menu. Let's do something like just an introduction statement. So random password chooser, and then lots of lines to just underline that. And then some introduction comments for people to follow. So type in a pattern of characters to choose a random password. So what happens at the moment? At the moment, it gives that introduction and then it calls our function down here. So generate password makes this code run, and this code for every letter in that pattern calls this function. Okay, so I want to give the user some instructions on what different types of characters to go for. So A is choose a random capital letter. Let's copy the whole line. So I pressed home to go to the beginning, shift end to select control C, control V. That's for a lowercase a. Choose a random lowercase letter. And then 0, choose a random numerical digit. And then finally, anything else should choose a random symbol or punctuation mark, or however you want to say it. So the empty print here just printed a blank line, and I'd quite like another one of those before it actually asks us to do anything. So now we can say, oops, please enter a password pattern. And then for example, and I'd like to give it a default, so something like A1 dot AA1, something like that. Okay, so it will ask us what type of pattern we want, but it doesn't actually use that yet. So let's store that. So we ask the question, we store the answer, pattern equals. And then instead of always generating a password with 4 capital letters and 4 lowercase letters, let's use the pattern in here. So it's worth saying here that this is a global variable. It's different to this local variable. They've got the same name, but this is a parameter that's passed in and treated as a local variable that only exists on line 18 to 21 inside this function. And we've got a completely separate parameter with the same name, but it only exists on these lines. And then we've got a global variable with the same name as well here. So just to save any confusion, let's call the password pattern. That's the global variable. And then password pattern, the value that the user types in is passed in here, and then it's called pattern as it's used in your function. All right, is this going to work? Enter a password. So A, let's try that. Yeah, that seems to work. The last thing that we'll do is make this a constant. So instead of displaying it down there, let's say default pattern equals all of that. And then we can show that default password. Why do you use constants? Well, you use them to make your code easier to read so that you can refer to them by name rather than by value. And then if you want to change that, you can just change it once rather than changing it in lots of places. We're only using it once at the moment, but I'm going to use it again now. Let's say if that password pattern is empty, as in if it's an empty string, let's set it to the default, as in what we're going to use if there's nothing there. So this time, oops, default, it's not a default password, it's a default pattern. And I don't want default password, it's called default pattern. There we go. So if we leave it blank now, it uses the default pattern which we've specified here. And if you want to change that, you only have to change it once. So let's go for 2 capital letters, 2 lowercase letters, 2 numbers and 2 digits. Then it should work fine. But because my program at the moment doesn't deal with numbers, I'm just going to take those out. There we go. Okay, so all that remains is just a couple of challenges. So challenge 1 is nice and easy. So I've made it so that it will choose a capital letter or a lowercase letter, but it doesn't yet choose a random number. That's your first challenge. Challenge 2 is make it display a warning if your password is too short. And then finally, just use a loop to generate 3 different passwords that the user can then choose from, whichever they prefer. So make it display 3 passwords to choose from, and all of them have to match the pattern. So at the moment it just displays 1. I would like it to show like option 1, option 2, option 3, and all of them should match the pattern that the user types in. So if you want all capital letters, then it should have lots of different options for you. Okay, so remember that you have links underneath this video in the description if you're watching on YouTube or on live.withcode.uk, or you can compete against your classmates if your school is registered for the free competitions on compete.withcode.uk. All the very best. See you next week. Bye-bye.